Welcome to Sewing with Nancy. I'm Nancy Zieman. The world of machine embroidery is stimulating, satisfying, and very exciting, with an amazing wealth of options and designs just waiting for you and your sewing machine. My guest on this three-part series is Eileen Roche, editor of Designs in Machine Embroidery. Eileen, welcome.
Thank you, Nancy. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm so excited about sharing all of these amazing techniques with your viewers and readers.
Let's begin with the basics. This attractive pillow features a striking combination of embroidered bleeding hearts showcased on a patchwork base. It's a great way to master the essentials of machine embroidery. Join us in discovering the joy of machine embroidery next on Sewing with Nancy.
Sewing with Nancy, TV's how-to sewing program with Nancy Zieman, is being brought to you by PFAFF, the largest European producer of sewing machines. PFAFF's creative line of sewing machines and hobby lock sergers are simply the best. Ginger, a tradition of quality in scissors and shears for home, classroom, and industry. Ginger scissors and shears are the choice of professionals. Madeira thread from Germany with superior quality and smart packaging to make it a sensational value, preferred by home and professional embroiderers everywhere. Oxmoor House, the publisher of innovative sewing, quilting, and craft books, including books by Nancy Zieman. Prim Dritz, the source for sewing and quilting notions, including products by Dritz, Collins, and Omnigrid. Amazing Designs by Great Notions, your complete source for machine embroidery. Over 200 embroidery pack collections currently available, including Designs by Nancy Zieman. And Nancy's Notions catalog, featuring specialty sewing books and unique, hard-to-find sewing notions and supplies.
Eileen and I would like to begin by sharing with you the dimensions to make this pillow. We have a common quilting pattern, and then you can see the embroidery in the various sections. We've used 3 different embroidery designs. They're all compatible with this bleeding heart design, which makes it coordinate very well. If you do not have an embroidery machine at home, you may want to take note now, because you could use these dimensions to create a pillow of your own, just as a quilted piece, or you could add some embellishment if you'd like. We started off with a 5-inch square in the center. Added on each side of the square a 3 by 5-inch strip. The corners have 3-inch squares, and we've used slightly darker fabrics in the corners. The right triangles started out by being 7.5-inch squares that were cut diagonally, and then they would be sewn on either side. Again, 3-inch strips on the side, and then the final little touch would be 3-inch squares in the corner. Keep in mind that all of the instructions and the dimensions are in the booklet that accompanies today's program. Use common quilting practices using 1/4 of an inch seam allowances to sew the blocks together. And you can see what a lovely combination this is. Looks nice just as it is, or we're going to add the embroidery, as you'll see in just a few minutes. So now, Eileen, I'd like to share with our viewers just kind of the basics of where these embroidery designs can be found.
Well, the basic source for embroidery designs is a memory card, and a memory card pops right into your machine. Therefore, you don't need a computer to interact with your embroidery machine. Or they come on a floppy disk, which you would, of course, just download from your floppy disk drive to the reader-writer program. They're also available on CDs, and again, that comes from your CD drive. But first, you need to attach your embroidery unit on most machines.
And you'll have to check your owner's manual, but for me, I need to turn off my machine, attach the embroidery unit, then I can turn the machine back on. I've lowered the feed dogs. I have my darning or the embroidery foot put on my machine, and with an embroidery needle. And I like to use that needle because I'm using embroidery thread, rayon embroidery thread for this project, and a lightweight thread in the bobbin. You don't want a heavy thread in that area. The tension needs to be changed just to loosen the tension from 5 to 3. That's a very common setting. Now, after we have the machine set up, we need to set up the hoop, but let's talk a little bit about stabilizers.
Right, and stabilizers are very important. I think you have 2 very good samples of a good job and a bad job.
Here's the bad job, first of all. Here's one of our bleeding heart designs, just stitched on the fabric. It was put in the hoop, but you can see all the little dimples all around the design. It didn't have enough support. The support is given with fusible interfacing and a stabilizer, or a combination. We've used both here. We've pressed on interfacing, and we used a cutaway stabilizer. This interfacing is supposed to be fused down. We have to fuse it down a little bit more, but it was fused down at one time, and then we put a stabilizer behind it, put it in the hoop, and did the stitching. You can see what a beautiful effect it gives in comparison to not adding enough stabilizer. And this is a common problem for beginners, not stabilizing it enough.
And you really want to select a stabilizer that's going to enhance the embroidery and also not diminish the hand of the fabric.
Here is the fusible interfacing that you could add. And then we have a cutaway stabilizer. After it has been the design stitched, you cut this away. And you have a good suggestion for this, Eileen.
Right. Use a tear away when the act of actually tearing away the stabilizer will not distort the stitches or hurt the fabric. Use a cutaway on delicate fabrics or delicate embroidery stitches that could be distorted.
For you at home right now, these look the same, I'm sure, but you can see I've torn this stabilizer, kind of a raw edge, a ragged edge. This one I've cut. I can't tear it. And one of these three stabilizers is really excellent to use. Or you can use a combination of the fusible and the stabilizer. Right. Now on our design, we are ready to...
Well, first I have to put the memory card into the machine. And once I put it inside, I can then select my card. And I need to select my design. And I believe on this screen it's number 3.
The machine talks to you a little bit.
It does talk to you. You have to know what it's saying so you can answer it and just push all the right buttons. These really are kind of foolproof. They do an awful lot of the work for you. One of the biggest problems of embroidery today is placement, and how you get accurate placement is really through the use of templates. There's a variety of ways to achieve a template. Number one would be to just stitch out the design on white organdy fabric that's been stabilized. And before you remove the organdy fabric from the hoop, you trace an outline of the inner hoop. You then remove your fabric from the hoop and cut it away. Now what I could do is position this right on my fabric.
And we'll move this over.
Okay, so that we can see it. And what I've done is I'm centering the design right in the center of my green square. And I'm going to use that as a way to eye the hoop.
And you place it over the larger hoop.
That's right. First you have to get the inner hoop aligned with the design that you want, and then we can work on the bottom hoop, which is not always so easy to do. I have my stabilizer behind me, and I'm just going to go, and this is...
Well, you can just press it down, and it's easier to do pressing it down when you're standing.
It is, absolutely. And I always use the heels of my palms instead of my fingertips because it is the strongest part of your hand. And if you hoop as much as I do, they get tired. Another way that you can use templates is to use commercially made templates. And they give you the ability to tape a template right in position. And you do that before you actually hoop your fabric, so that when you are hooping your fabric, nothing is moving, as you just saw did happen there.
Yes.
So now what I'll do is I'll place this right on our machine, and I'm going to make sure that my needle goes to the center point. And I'm able to move my needle with the mechanism provided by the machine.
And those cross marks can be aligned with the little hash marks that are on the hoop to get everything centered.
That's right, Nancy. So now I'm sure that my needle is going to go right into the center hole. I have to remove my template so that I don't stitch right through it, and then I'm able to press go. And on this machine you need to do the presser foot first. And off we go.
And as you're stitching that first color, you know, I kind of keep in mind that as you have along your machine, I kind of line up the colors in the sequence that I'm going to be stitching. And Eileen has them lined up right here in sequence of how they should be stitched on this design, so that you can just go from one color to another. And the instructions always give the sequence for you.
That's right, and that's very helpful because many times the artwork is the only thing that you have to use. You can't always tell by the screen exactly what you're stitching and when.
The setup really is the portion of the design that takes some time. Working with the stabilizers and hooping it, the sewing is effortless. So this is going to be stitching this first color, which will take just a few minutes, and maybe a second. And after it is done stitching, it's going to stop, and we'll just change thread color, and we'll put on the next thread color, and keep on stitching till all the designs are complete. So now you know the sequence of adding the designs to all the quadrants of this pillow, and we're ready to go on to another area of machine embroidery.
If you're a gardening enthusiast, this country garden blouse is sure to be the perfect addition to your wardrobe. By repeating and rotating the bow on the pocket 4 times and skipping some of the colors in the original design, I created the perfect frame for my French herb motif. Templates helped us precisely position the individual bows. We'll show you how right now.
This shirt is just the perfect place to put this little pocket enhancement and show you the idea of rotating a design and making the most use out of your designs. But I have to show you the lower edge of Eileen's shirt. She has stitched out several of the herbs along the lower edge and really making it a cute overshirt. But we're going to concentrate on this bow design, and it's just part of the design. And here you can see what it looks like, just a single portion of it stitched out. And then 4 of them are going to be connected to create a circle. And this is the rehooping technique.
That's right. I have already stitched out 2 of the bows on my fabric. This fabric has been cut to the same dimension as the pocket on my ready-wear garment. And whenever I am embroidering on a ready-wear garment, and especially the pocket area, what I will do is remove the pocket from the garment completely. Because the pocket is normally a lot smaller than the dimension of my hoop, I need to make it bigger so that I can hoop it. And I do that by cutaway stabilizer. I just spray the top of the cutaway stabilizer and then place my fabric or my pocket right into position. As you can see, we already have stitched down 2, and it's time to move on to the 3rd. As I place my template into position, the only thing that I'm really paying attention to is that this section of the bow, the one that's previously stitched and the next one, are connecting. I'm not paying any attention to the text or this little flower here because they are not centered in the overall design. I can come back later and do that. Once I have my template in position, it's time to hoop. And again, we're going to do the same philosophy as we did before. We're going to make sure that these points on our hoop are also in alignment with the marks on our crosshair. And as I put this into the outer hoop, it's important to make sure that we're square, and we're going to get a little bit of movement, so sometimes it's easiest to do this if you're standing. One little hint on hooping is once you're securely in the hoop is to go ahead and push that inner hoop a little bit lower than the outer hoop, and that's a technique called countersinking. What that does is give you a very nice tight drum on the inside of your hoop, ensuring the proper tension.
So by stitching 4 of those bows and rehooping after each stitching, this is the effect you can get from that one design. Here's another example of rehooping, and Eileen created this with a wrought iron look design, and here's one of the designs right here. And she used this by repeating it over and over, and you can see how this creates a beautiful effect on this butterfly quilt. And I can't imagine the number of rehoops that you had on this quilt.
Well, after about number 36, I stopped counting.
And what a lovely combination it is, and you can see what a great look it has, not only ready to wear, but on a quilt project. Here's another example of embroidery which used only part of a design. As a basis for this embroidery, Eileen selected floral designs from a disc pack. By stitching only the outline of the flower and stem and eliminating the fill stitches, she significantly expanded the number of available designs. Using only the outline definitely gives a stitching a delicate look. If you're wondering what the design really looks like, here are 3 of the floral designs, and they're really quite heavily filled in.
They are, and they're much too dense for such a delicate shell as that we're about to show you.
And you can see the change from the original design to what Eileen has created on this piqué top. And this requires eliminating some of the stitching patterns.
Right, and the easiest way to do that is right at your sewing machine. You can go and pull up your design on the screen of your machine. You have a color select key that you need to push, and that will move you through each of the colors. I know, because I've done this before, that color number 3 is actually the outline of my stems. So that's where I'll start my design. Once that is completed, I'll change my thread to pink, and then I will go and seek the outline of the flowers, and I'm complete. It's a fast, easy finish for a ready-made garment.
So as you can see, the stitching is easy. It's sometimes just the setup and the know-how to make the most use of your design library is what we want to teach you right now, or review. Again, the quick Synopsis is that you can just use portions of the design and then also connect them together to give your designs more length. And then you can re-hoop and reconnect the designs to make an interesting pattern. I hope you'll give it a try. Next, a showcase of Eileen's creations. Embroidery patchwork and texturized fabric are a striking combination in this one-of-a-kind top, which Eileen calls Simply Blues. The asymmetrical embroidery is wearable art you'll truly enjoy wearing. The stitching is easy, and the best part of this floral fantasy is that the flowers will never wilt. Sometimes one design is all you need to transform an ordinary garment into a designer original. Eileen selected a single leaf from an embroidery design collection, then modified it to create a leaf outline for the body of the jacket and a fill-in design for the collar. Satin stitching connects the individual leaves while stippling provides additional interest. Mirror imaging the design adds dramatic impact to this wear-it-everywhere jacket. Embroidered on sand-washed silk, this floral design is elegant and contemporary, yet suggests a hint of the Far East. The overall design cascades from the right shoulder to the left waist, with a leaf motif enhancing the embroidery bordering the neckline. It's sophisticated elegance with an oriental flair.
Next, Nancy's going to show you how to make greeting cards with your embroidery machine.
Embroidery on paper at first thought seems an unusual combination, yet stitching directly on paper or appliquing embroidery samples to paper stock can make attractive stationery and greeting cards. Here's how. We're kind of stretching the limits a little bit of embroidery right now, of asking you to sew on paper, but this is kind of a fun expansion of this creative art. The needed option here, of course, is paper, but paper stock, heavier paper. We have found that if you choose lightweight paper that you may use as far as your computer, it's just going to stitch right through the paper and leave holes. This heavier stock found at an office supply store or paper store is beefier and heavy. The design we chose was lightweight. It did not have a lot of fill-in stitches. Some of the airy type stitches help in this design. Do a test, but to stitch on the paper in the hoop, you're going to need a sticky back stabilizer. We're going to use this type of stabilizer throughout this program, but basically you put the stabilizer in the hoop and then remove the top paper area, which then you have the sticky back area. Then the paper can simply be positioned right onto this section, and you can stitch on it. It's kind of a fun way of expanding that sewing library of your embroidery stitches. The easier way is to use some of the samples that you have left over from stitching on fabric. This is my favorite one to do. Today's program we used the Bleeding Heart sample quite a bit, and in preparing for this show we stitched out various samples on different colors of fabric. We had some left over. So we simply backed the fabric with paperback fusible web, placed another piece of fabric in the area, and then fused it to the stationery, just in the upper left-hand corner. If you'd like to sew on organza or organdy to create a more wispy look, this greeting card is very attractive. Lovely invitation. As you can see, we've used some organdy or organza, placed a ribbon on the card, and then we could add a greeting later on. In the hoop, we have the organza plus a water-soluble stabilizer to make the fabric a little heavier and stiffer, stitched and then fringed the design and attached it to the ribbon. However you'd like to work with this, it really is easy. You can use a fabric that has been a lightweight, or you could even trim away all the extra organza and just have this design as a dimensional design. I hope you'll try this creative option of creating greeting cards by using some of your samples on stationery or stitching directly on the paper for a very creative look. In this first program of Amazing Machine Embroidery, Eileen and I detailed the very basics of working with a computerized sewing machine and embroidery designs. The designs are extremely easy to stitch. The key is placement as well as stabilizing the fabric or even the paper of making greeting cards. Next, we're going to show you how to work with landscape and create a design with embroidery. Here's a hint from PFAFF. For the most accurate of top and edge stitching, use PFAFF's ability to change the needle positions. There are a total of 19 positions ranging from far left to far right, plus many more positions in between. I use the needle position option frequently when using the edge stitch foot. The stitching can be positioned just at your preference. I also use the needle position option when top stitching a zipper. I know you'll find many more uses. Here's a hint from Primdritz, the manufacturers of OmniGrid rulers. These precision laser-cut rulers give unmatched accuracy. They're made of heavy-duty clear acrylic and are perfect for embroidery cutting any color fabric from light to dark. OmniGrid's exclusive double sight lines are printed on the underside of the ruler for greatest accuracy in contrasting black and yellow, enabling you to see the measurements you need. Notice the ease of measuring on this pink fabric as well as a dark print. In addition to the straight cutting lines, you'll find degree lines, 60, 45, and 30, allowing you to cut geometric shapes without the use of templates. I think you can see why I use OmniGrid rulers on TV and at home. Here's a hint from Amazing Designs by Great Notions. Sometimes a garment requires subtle embroidery due to the fabric weight or the delicate garment style, like this cotton piqué shell. Amazing Designs suggests looking at embroidery designs with a new eye. Look to see if you can eliminate some colors or elements to get a completely different look. The flowers on this shell are from the Amazing Designs Floral Collection number 5, where they are shown in very large, vibrant flowers. By eliminating all the color except the outline, you have a look that's just right for this garment. Welcome to Sewing with Nancy. I'm Nancy Zieman, and this is the second program of my series on amazing machine embroidery. Whether it's a single motif strategically positioned on a collar or a series of designs embroidered on a wall hanging, machine embroidery can give your projects added interest and vitality. To give us machine embroidery inspiration, I'm pleased again to welcome Eileen Roche. Eileen is an embroidery expert and designer. Welcome.
Thank you, Nancy. Today we're going to teach them how to combine embroidery designs.
You can bring back fond memories of Christmas every time you use today's first project, an embroidered tree skirt. It features a series of proportional embroidery designs combined to create a holiday landscape. That's what's next on Sewing with Nancy. I'd like to start by giving you the dimensions for this mini Christmas tree skirt. We made this to fit a tabletop tree, and we made it with 6 wedges, and the wedges, the directions and the pattern will be in the booklet that accompanies the program. Basically, it's about 10.5 inches at its longest point, 10.5 at its widest point. And you can see the 6 wedges that have been sewn together with the seams. We're teaching you in this section how to work with these designs proportionately to create a landscape type of look. And each panel is just the perfect palette to put 2 to 4 scenes. Eileen, we've used denim as this fabric, as the base fabric, and of course you could use practically any fabric, but a stabilizer and fusible interfacings are so important.
That's right, and even though denim we usually consider to be a sturdy fabric, we still will stabilize it with a fusible backing. And we like to fuse the entire denim area because we don't want patches of stabilizer to show through on our finished Christmas tree skirt.
So we purchased 3/8 of a yard of 60-inch wide fabric, which is denim, and then 5/8 of a yard of a heavy fusible interfacing. If you did not have 60-inch wide fabric, you would need 5/8 of a yard of fabric. You'd need again 5/8 of a yard for the lining and the piping. So it doesn't take a lot of yardage, but it will take a little bit of stitching time.
Well, and the embroidery will take a lot of embroidery time.
The wedges are penciled with a fabric marking pencil on the fabric. As you can see, we started to have about 3 of them, and we have found the nap didn't matter, so we flipped them around, and we traced the pattern shape out of a medium that has a paper backing, and we can just press, or excuse me, a wax backing, so we can press that onto the fabric after tracing it around, peel it off, and then reposition it on the fabric. And then I'm just going to press this on. You can press it on a couple of times, or you could trace the pattern on tissue paper and pin it on, and then trace around again. So you have all 6 wedges marked on your fabric. Then after marking, you can do the placement of your design to create a scene with this Christmas time look.
Right, and it is always easier to embroider on a larger piece of fabric than the actual wedges. So let's take a look at one of the wedges that has the farmhouse, a Christmas tree, and a sled. And we have 2 different sets of, or styles of templates to show you how to work with a landscape. With proportional embroidery, you're going to have some designs that would be perfect in the background, some for the midground, and others that are ideal for the foreground. And you have to find out which goes where before you stitch, because you can't ever put embroidery behind existing embroidery. So let's take a look at this template that was made by stitching out on organdy our design and then tracing around the inner ring before we remove the fabric from our hoop. We now have a perfect image of the embroidery design. We can also use commercially available templates that allow you to see the design that's printed, right on the plastic. The farmhouse is perfect for the background because it is actually about the same size as our sled. We need to separate them in the landscape seam so that they become believable. By doing this, we're all set to go, and I know exactly where everything has to stitch out.
You already stitched out the farmhouse in the background.
That's right.
And you're just going to re-hoop the fabric, repositioning the hoop. Now, with all hooping, whether you're machine embroidery, hand embroidery, anything on this machine, what we're going to do is put the larger ring on the table, loosen the screw, place the fabric over the larger ring, and the smaller hoop inside the larger one, and press down.
Right. Okay, we're ready to embroider. I'm going to attach this to the machine, and you can see by the way this is lined up in the hoop that I was probably most likely able to stitch both designs in the same hooping without re-hooping. But again, I did need to know what had to be embroidered first, so sequence is very important. My farmhouse is already complete, so it's time to stitch the evergreen tree.
And while Eileen is putting that in a machine, I'm going to give you how a machine is set up for machine embroidery, just as a quick review. My machine is turned off. That's what I need to do for my machine. And then slip on the embroidery unit, turn on the machine, drop the feed dogs, place on the darning foot, an embroidery needle, embroidery thread. That's the important part. And I usually line up all my threads next to my machine from forward to back on the sequence they're going to be used, a lightweight bobbin thread, and then loosen the top tension by 2 numbers. These are the general sequences, and then insert the embroidery card right into the mechanism. And you're ready to go.
There's one more feature on the machine that we would like to share with you, and that's the trace feature. This is going to travel around the perimeter of the design, and it's used as a double checkpoint to make sure that the placement of your embroidery is just right. So I'm going to move a little bit so that you can see my markings a little bit clearer. I'm going to insert a removable marker right into the foot. This is a strange feeling, but it works. And it's going to draw this line right there for me.
And tell you if you have it placed correctly.
That's right. So that's another feature that you can use on your machine to check placement.
So templates, one way or the other, or you could definitely use this walkabout, traceabout, whatever your machine is called. It's now time that you can just begin to sew, because Eileen has it set up.
That's right.
And she can just start doing some of the sewing, and this is the easiest part. The preparation takes just a little bit of time. There are many colors that are going to be organized, and as that's sewing, I'm going to show you the finished garment, or the finished project. And she's starting to sew this scene. You can see the larger tree in the foreground, the smaller house in the background, the sled again in the foreground, combining nice areas and nice scenes. And we've simply chosen these things because we thought they looked good together. So the key to keep in mind when working with landscape type embroidery is to stabilize the fabric. Background designs first, foreground designs second, and enjoy. Using the same series of designs, Eileen used the Christmas motifs and put them onto a wall hanging and made it very dimensional.
That's right. This winter wonderland is believable because the larger designs are in the foreground and the smaller designs are all the way in the background. This is a view through 2 forest trees, and the way I achieve this is by starting with my large applique pieces, which are these 2, and then I go and I use my templates. I basically have my open area where my landscape will be, and I need to decide where I'm going to put my horizon. And I do that by just following right along the horizon that's on my designs. This is going to be downhill, and I have a farmhouse over here that I will add, and I can put my horizon right there.
So above the horizon you have the sky type fabric. Below you've used a cream fabric and the real wall hanging to get this proportionate.
That's right. And to further make it be a believable landscape, I use quilting stitches to make a road, to bring the eye up into the scene to the through the foreground to the background, and then stitch down some darker areas to make it look like low-lying areas.
And you can also look at these snowmen. Eileen has added a little extra machine stitching to show the drifts of snow around the snowmen. A great combination of sewing techniques.
Here's a showcase of other proportional designs. A contrasting band at the lower edge of this tunic provided the perfect palette for machine embroidered accents. Recall those lazy summer days when you relaxed in a lawn chair, enjoying summer breezes near a trellis covered with fragrant roses. By combining fabric, threads, and machine embroidery, those memories can last forever. Embroidered accents can add interest and detail to accessory items as well as to garments. This hat and pocket tote showcase memories of a trip to the shore with sandcastles, starfish, and a beach chair and umbrella providing the subject matter. Seashells embroidered on a beach towel offer the perfect complement to this dynamic duo. Effective selection of fabrics, thread colorations, and embroidery designs can create a mood, as in this haunting Halloween wall hanging. By repeating and resizing the trees, as well as mirror imaging and rotating the lightning bolts, I added depth and dimension to this spooktacular design. Next, Nancy will show you how to combine iron-on transfers with machine embroidery.
Our next project combines embroidery with iron-on transfers. The background elements of the branch and birdhouse were pressed on first, followed by the embroidery. Embroidery can easily be used in combination with other design elements for extremely interesting results. You could possibly make a new jacket or embellish a ready-made jacket with this technique. I would highly recommend that you try on the jacket first, or if you're making it, to pin the shoulder seams of the front and back together, place it on your shoulder to determine where you'd like the embroidery plus the iron-on transfers. This shows you that you can use embroidery in combination with other elements. For example, another option might be stamping of the fabric. On a jacket front that we have cut out, I'm going to position the iron-on transfer. It's just like a normal transfer. The reverse image is what you see on the paper side, and you place it wrong side down, right side down, follow the manufacturer's instructions to press it into place. To save a little time, you can see we have it pressed, ready to go. So the background is positioned. Templates and positioning designs are so important. The sewing is simple. It's getting it just where you'd like it that takes maybe a little extra time, a little extra step. You can purchase templates, make them yourself, however you'd like to work with it. But here I'm going to position one of the leaves, and I think I would like one leaf to be right in this area. And then tape down the template. And then simply hoop the fabric using this guideline. And I'm going to hoop this so it's just about in the middle. And it's easier to hoop, by the way, when you're working on a flatter surface. Now I can take this to my machine, insert it into the stitching. Here you can see that the embroidery needle is centered over the hole of the leaf. And before starting to stitch, I simply remove that template, and then I can begin the stitching. It will take a few times to rehoop and add another design, but let's take a look at Eileen's jacket. She stitched all the leaves first, and then stitched the birds on top to create the dimension that we've been working in today's program. It's a great concept, a great way to combine designs. Another very interesting way of working with embroidery is to embroider on sweaters, a very common element in ready-mades, and you can do the same thing at home. This sweater is in process of being embroidered. The embroidery has been completed. We just need to remove some of the stabilizers. But I've left it in the sequence so you can see all the layers. Sweaters are stretchy and they're very thick and nap. And to put embroidery design onto it, one of the key elements is to have a water-soluble stabilizer on the top so that the design does not embed into the ribs of the sweaters. The other interesting element is that I have a hoop inside my sweater. I'm going to take it out, of course, but you don't see any hoop rings on the outer edge. The reason that I worked with, or the reason that I could work with this is a sticky back stabilizer. A paper backing is placed on the stabilizer, and when you score the paper, which I've already done, and then remove the top area, you have that sticky area. We've used this for embroidery, for applique, for many other types of sewing. So this is how the sweater sticks to the hoop area. I've also going to try this, or I will also make this sweater a little more stable in addition, a third stabilizer. And on this brown one that I'm going to be embroidering, I have pressed on a stabilizer that has a wax backing. It's a temporary press-on stabilizer to keep this layer fused into place. So let me get all my layers kind of going. To attach the water-soluble stabilizer, put a little adhesive spray. Attach this on the top. This will come off later. Always spray to the stabilizer. Then hold the sweater up to your body, determine where you'd like the placement. As before, I'm going to position the template where I'd like the design to be stitched or embroidered. Now, I tried the sweater on earlier, and this is about the place where I'd like this leaf design, and I'll temporarily position this. We're going to take this off, of course, before doing the embroidery. Now, just a quick review. I have the water-soluble stabilizer on top, and then a temporary press-on stabilizer underneath. And then to hold the sweater fabric into the hoop, we have the third type of stabilizer. So this is well stabilized. And I'm just going to insert the hoop, as you saw, between the neckline opening and kind of feel where that hoop section is and give this a good press just by the hand. And then the sweater will stick to the sticky back stabilizer. The next step is to insert this in the machine. Because of all the bulk of the sweater, I don't have an easy opening. Perhaps on some garments you could open the side seams and go in through that area, but on this sweater, since it's full fashioned, I'm going to just work with it entirely whole. So right now I'll show you how to deal with that extra weight. I have my machine set up with the embroidery unit. I have the memory card in place. I've selected the oak leaf design, and now I'm going to place all this fabric, or I should say the sweater, underneath the presser foot area. I'm starting from the lower edge, and there's no graceful way to do this. It just takes a little time of maneuvering the fabric to make certain that you'll get underneath the hoop area. And this is bulky fabric. And just give this a little extra push, which I just did, and now I have the sweater kind of making certain that it's not underneath the hoop, which it is right now. And you almost sometimes work inside out. I'm doing this because I'm showing you this not in position, because I want to show you that it takes a little maneuvering and a little time to work it through. And now I'm going to attach the hoop into place. Just slide it in there with all these fabrics. Sometimes you can't exactly see where you are. It clicked into place, or we're ready to go. Now, the reason we have the template in position is so that we can put the leaf in the correct position, and you can see that the center hole, or the starting point of the template, is not where the needle is started. So I'm simply just going to move the needle into the right place. And here we go. We'll just keep moving it until I get positioned. And as I put the needle down, it's just about there. But I don't want that template permanently attached to my sweater, of course. So now I can just remove the template. Now, take a little extra time, make certain that the sweater is positioned right. Make sure it's attached to that sticky back stabilizer. I'm going to lower the presser foot, take a deep breath, and start to sew. I'll just sew a couple stitches, lock it, and let it do its thing. I've aligned the thread colors to the right of my machine, so I know what fabric comes, or thread color comes next. And as you can see, you can't really walk away at this point because of all the bulk of the sweater in this area. You need to make certain that the sweater does not pop back into the sewing field. So while this stitches away, we've done the hard part. We stabilized it with a top stabilizer, a lower stabilizer, position it in the hoop, and pretty soon I'll have a great leaf design on my sweater. Here's the finished embroidery. It took about 8 minutes of time to stitch out the design and then remove the stabilizer from the top and cut away the stabilizer from the lower edge. The sweater did not stretch out of shape and the design is positioned perfectly. Give it a try. Here's a hint from Ginger. When I'm adding a decorative touch to a project and I need to trim really close to decorative edge stitching, an applique scissors makes that job easy. The curved handle ensures a comfortable hand position and eliminates stress on my hand and wrist, while the large bill efficiently lifts the fabric I want to trim away. I also use my applique scissors when I'm doing reverse applique, for trimming fabric from behind lace, for grading seams, and to trim quilt batting. An applique scissors is the right tool for trimming away anytime, anywhere. Here's a hint from Madeira. Machine embroidery is a great way to personalize garments and home decor. When I do machine embroidery on garments for my sons or for the home, I want the thread that can stand up to the rigors of high-speed stitching as well as the challenge of repeated laundering. The new ColorFast polyneon thread fits both criteria. I'm especially pleased with the continued brilliance of polyneon, even after repeated exposure to sunlight, chlorine, and machine washing. This 40-weight polyester filament thread also is extremely strong, so it resists abrasion and breakage. Here's a hint from PFAFF. For the most accurate of top and edge stitching, use PFAFF's ability to change the needle positions. There are a total of 19 positions ranging from far left to far right, plus many more positions in between. I use the needle position option frequently when using the edge stitch foot. The stitching can be positioned just at your preference. I also use the needle position option when top stitching a zipper. I know you'll find many more uses. Welcome to Sewing with Nancy and the final program in my series on Amazing Machine Embroidery. In today's program, we'll show you how your computer and sewing machine can talk to each other. Machine embroidery specialist Eileen Roche is again my guest. Eileen, thanks for joining me and sharing your great ideas.
Thank you, Nancy. It's a pleasure to be here again. Wait till your viewers see just how exciting embroidery can be with their computer.
This stunning wall hanging captures the very essence of the Orient with its multicolored fans, bonsai, cherry blossoms, kimono-clad ladies, bamboos, and herons. Many of the designs were manipulated and modified using devices that allow a computer to talk to a sewing machine. That's what's next on Sewing with Nancy. This is a portion of this series that's very high-tech. I realize that you may not have a computerized sewing machine, and if you have a computerized sewing machine, you may not have a computer that talks to your sewing machine. But I think it's important that you know what's available and how creative you can be with this interesting combination of equipment. On the wall hanging that you just saw, we're going to concentrate on this lower panel that has a bonsai branch with blossoms, and Eileen has stitched several of these together. We're just going to transfer this one design from the disc. The disc holds many of these oriental flavor designs on it, and we need to transfer it to a memory card, a personal memory card of your sewing machine. And Eileen, we found that discs are a little bit more economically feasible for many of us, and you're going to show us now how to use it.
That's right. Once you have installed your designs on the disk pack onto your hard drive, you need to open up your Reader Writer program. Go to File, Open, and then select your design. In this instance, we're going to select the branch. Sometimes it comes up in funny colors, and that's perfectly acceptable because you get to pick the thread right at the machine. Once it's up on the screen, we just select on the icon that lets me talk to my sewing machine and write to the card. You'll see a screen that says, "Saving the stitch on the card, please wait." You'll also notice on the sewing machine that there's an icon of the computer and an icon of the embroidery machine, and they are talking to one another. There's a line that connects them. Once it disappears, that means that the saving is complete. It's now time to select card, and my design will be just right there the way it would be with a regular memory card. So we're going to go ahead and put our presser foot down and tell the machine that we're ready to stitch, and off we go. And we're supposed to take a couple stitches, trim that, and off we go.
Now you can just let it sew away for the first color, and we're sewing the blossoms of this bonsai branch. as that's sewing, I'm going to show you another option that you can work with a sizing and editing program. It's software, just like you buy software for a program to do specific things. It's software to size designs. This is the same bonsai branch and blossoms, but without the pine section of it. And Eileen has stacked one on top of the other. In the computer, you can eliminate that branch portion, that green portion, and Eileen's going to show you how in that sizing program.
That's right. Now we need to have our sizing and editing program open because it's important to be able to manipulate the design as you would like it to be. I have opened up the design and I need to select the proper hoop. You have a number of choices to match your machine. Once you do that, I like to go and explore the whole design. I like to go through it color by color. First it's going to stitch the buds, and then the little green section that attaches to the branch, and then over to the branch, and finally the green needles. So once I decide that I don't want that anymore, I need to select just that design. The cursor will select the entire design, but I need to just select the green. And I can do that by selecting the color select tool. Once I do that, I hit delete on my keyboard and it's gone. Now I have a completed branch without any pine needles, and it's ready to sew. I can save it and again send it to my memory card.
And I hope everyone was listening as you were sizing your design. You were also sewing at the same time. So this is where you can really do two things at once. Here's another great quilt that Eileen made, a Merry Christmas quilt featuring stockings. You don't need a mantle if you have this type of wall quilt. And you can see the great stockings that have been embroidered around this quilt. But we're going to pay special interest to the Christmas tree in the middle because that design has a variety of ornaments, and we're going to show you how to size them up or size them down. Here's a close-up of that Christmas tree, and I'd like to point out that the design that has ornaments on it has 4 ornaments strung together with popcorn in between, and we've stitched it out on a sample just to show you. But if you look at this embroidery design and look at the Christmas tree, you can see a variety of sizes of those ornaments. Notice how they vary in dimension. That's because Eileen made them smaller or larger and then could rotate them so that the Santas are not all going in the same direction, or the candy canes are going in opposite directions. And Eileen, you're ready to perform your magic.
That's right. Over in our sizing and editing program, I've opened up the ornament design, and I think the first thing I would like to do is mirror image it so I can get the candy cane on the other side of the design. Now let's see about sizing it, and we can make it smaller or we can make it bigger. And each thing that we do, we can also save it in a mirror image position. This expands your library of designs and makes your Christmas tree look quite believable.
And again, as you stated, you save it after each change so that you can use those designs and stitch them out.
That's right, Nancy.
This example shows the pattern of a butterfly. And the butterfly template that you see here is just the way the design appears on the disc. But Eileen has allowed these butterflies to fly away, not just to be flat like a taxidermist perhaps might place it in a display box, but these look alive and bright and vibrant. Again, a sizing and editing software program is what you need to make some changes, and it's easier than it looks.
That's right. Again, we open up our butterfly in the right program. Now what we want to do is we want to rotate this design so that when I do size it, it's going to have a different effect. I'm going to turn it about 30 degrees, and all I did was select my rotation tool, grab the handle, and turn. I now go and I select the main cursor tool, and I'm going to size that. I'm going to make it be a little bit skinnier, and voila, it looks like it's flying right off the page.
It sure does. That's an amazing portion of editing and sizing a design. And perhaps you'd like to change the stitch density. This is a great example of many different fish sewn different ways. This is the traditional design. It's stitched out very heavy, a lot of fill-in stitches. The fish behind it, you can almost see the scales. This is because the stitch density and the sizes have been changed within the program, within the fill-in stitch. And Eileen, your turn to show us how.
That's right. This is a normal fish design, meaning it is not an applique design. It doesn't give you that extra step, but you know, I'm not one to follow all the rules, so you can always push the envelope a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to select on the density tool, and in there I have a number of choices. I have a 60 weight thread, which is very fine, and the default setting is 40 weight, which is our normal weight of a machine embroidery thread. But I'm going to go ahead and select yarn, which means now my stitches will be very wide apart on my fill stitches. And as you can see on the screen, you see a lot of the graph right through the fish. In my stitching process, I actually laid down a metallic fabric first
And I have
and
that.
stitched on top.
Yes, and here's a sample of the metallic fabric applique down onto the fabric, and then when Eileen stitched over it, you could see the metallic fabric coming through. There aren't as many fill-in stitches, and it really gives a nice variety. And as you stated many times, it expands the library of stitches, and you can be extremely creative with just one design. I'd like to share two of Eileen's embroidery masterpieces that use the sizing and editing techniques you just learned. This wall quilt, entitled One Silly Frog, is a glimpse into a summer pond. The frog sits on a background lily pad with the foreground lily pads in a variety of sizes, all adjusted by the sizing program. Also notice the dragonflies. Again, sizes and shapes were varied from the original design. A few of my favorite things is the name of this fabric and thread artwork. It was inspired by a greeting card. Eileen came across the ideal wood-like fabric and combined several designs. The personalizing of this embroidery took place in the hanging teacups. Here's a printout of the original teacup design. Notice the lace background. Eileen removed the lace on the editing program to give the teacups the ability to hang in the cupboard. How creative! If you have a home computer, perhaps you have many software programs in your computer. Maybe one to plan your budget or another one to make greeting cards. Likewise, there are a variety of software programs for your embroidery. And we have a lettering program that we'd like to show you that works with the design. We've made a special baby blanket for Lance Robert, who was born in April of 2000, working on a high-loft fleece, and we were able to personalize it with his name and date. And Eileen's going to show us how this works with the lettering software.
Nancy, we're in our lettering program, and we have the screen up that is adjusted to our hoop size. And I now want to go and select on the stock lettering key so that I can enter my text. And I think because I'm here with you today, I'll put Sewing with Nancy. Since I want 2 lines of text, I have to put a return in between. Otherwise, it won't come out as 2 lines of text. Once we're satisfied with our entry, we hit OK. Now we have some funny little boxes that are not that easy to read. Once I left-click, you can see that Sewing with Nancy appears there. And again, it most certainly does not look like stitches right now, but it will once we are done with manipulation. I use my up and down arrows on my keyboard to make my lettering larger or smaller. And I definitely want to go a little bit smaller so I can fit right inside that hoop. I click. Take a check. I said, well, I think I want my S and to be a little bit larger. So just by right-clicking on the S, I can make that much larger. I'll bring it all the way up to 8.15, and right down here in the corner of my computer screen, you can see what the size is. I now want to do the same thing to the N in Nancy. And you'll see in these boxes, there's an X only in that box, which we know is the N. So again, I'm going to go ahead up and take that right up to about 8, a little bit over 8 millimeters. And they should measure just fine. In order to see it better, I'm going to go ahead and click on my stock lettering key so that I now can decide if I want to change colors between letters, between words, or between lines, and I don't. So I say OK, it does its magic, and very soon it stitches.
And then you would save that if you just wanted it that way to your memory card.
That's right.
But now you can also combine this with a design.
Oh boy, now we get really exciting. So we need to open up, let's do that rattle that we used on that baby blanket. And again, now I have the design right in the center of the screen, but I need to add Lance's name. And we'll just say Lance Robert. And again, a return and his birth date. I'll give him a new birth date. And we'll say OK. And again, I could choose a different font if I wanted to. Okay, this is looking kind of good. Let's make it a little bit bigger. But I would like to do that arc. So what I'm going to do is select the arc key. Suddenly, I have a circle of text. And I need to widen that arc just a little bit so that I can really get away from the rattle and not stitch on top of it. Okay, I'm satisfied with that. Now I'll go up to my stock lettering key again, and it's going to turn into stitches.
It's thinking right now, I can hear it, and
Yep,
there you go.
There we go.
As you can see, that is really a fun way of working with your sewing machine and your computer. And we have this design that you saw earlier, but also we have several other options to share with you. We've stitched out a couple of others on corners with different fonts rather than arcing them just straight across the bottom and the top. And you could also add, if you wanted to, just monograms around this set of rattles. So this is a very high-tech way of working with fun programs.
Now Nancy is going to show you how to download a design from the internet.
Continuing with our program on very high-tech sewing, I'm going to show you how to download a design from the internet. There are a variety of designs available to you out there free, and it's just for the using. As before in this series, you will need a reader-writer program or a converter box so that your computer and sewing machine can talk to each other. In your sewing machine or converter box, you'll have a personalized card that goes along with your sewing machine. Simply insert this, and I'm going to insert it into the portion of my machine, snap it into place, and then we can find our free design. A free design is available for you at www.sewingwithnancy.com. No spaces needed in between the words, and type those letters in, and this is a front door that you'll see. The area that you will go to find the free design is the sewing room. What better place to find a free design? And I'll click on that. I'll try it once more. There we go. And under the sewing room, you'll find a variety of things listed for you to learn about, but you'll also find a free embroidery design. And here it is. It's an outline design that has the capability of being an applique design, and I'll show you the two versions in just a few minutes. Eileen and I earlier showed you how to transfer a design from a disk on the computer to your card in your machine. You'd follow the same procedures. I know not all of you have this at home, but it's just interesting to find out what is available. Now this design, after I get it to read to my card, can be stitched out. We love to give you projects that you can do the sewing on, and this is what I'm going to give you as a project. You'll get the pattern for the evening purse in the book that accompanies the series. You get the template that goes along with it, and you can see it's made of about 1/3 of a yard of fabric, including 1/3 of a yard of lining and some interfacing. This shows 3 of the designs in this very interesting pattern. I mentioned also that the design had the capability of being an applique. You simply place a section of fabric on top of, in this instance, the black, and after the first outlining is finished, the machine will stop. You remove the hoop from the machine and trim away the excess fabric. Insert it back in, and then the second outline stitch is completed, and it gives a very elegant look. Again, the pattern and the template are in the booklet that accompany the program. You may want to make your own type of pattern. It's about 9 1/4 inches wide. And let me show you the pattern. And we give you the little placements for the templates. And you need to transfer the markings to the fabric, and we've outlined in very light pencil the shape of the flap, and the extra purse length is about 14 inches long. Then there are little dots where we would place the template over this area so we can tape it into place just the same way that we did earlier in this program. And you can just get it nicely positioned, and I tape it down. After taping it, then you would place the fabric into the hoop. We're going to use again a sticky back stabilizer because we've used a kind of a suede-like fabric. If you were using a woven fabric where you could hoop it, you can certainly do that application. After stitching one design, then you would remove it from the sticky back stabilizer and re-hoop it. And let me just show you how you would reposition it in the hoop, and then again place the template on the fabric and re-put it again back into the hoop and do the other stitching. With a little bit of sewing and a little bit of time investment, you'll find that you'll have an elegant evening bag with a free design and your sewing know-how. I hope you've enjoyed this series on amazing machine embroidery. Eileen has shared with us such inspiration and great information. Thank you, Eileen.
Thank you, Nancy, for having me. I've enjoyed every minute.
Thanks for joining us. Bye for now.
Visit Nancy's website at www.sewingwithnancy.com for more information on this program. Sewing with Nancy has been made possible by grants from the following companies: PFAFF, simply the best European line of sewing machines; Ginger, a tradition of quality in scissors and shears; Madeira Threads, designed for home and professional embroiderers everywhere; Oxmoor House, publishers of sewing, quilting, and craft books; Prim Dritz, the source for sewing and quilting notions; Amazing Designs by Great Notions, your complete source for machine embroidery; and Nancy's Notions Sewing Catalog, featuring specialty sewing books and notions.